What do you think in terms of how, when we saw one of the only issues the IOC president addressed openly, because you can't ignore it, was air pollution. What do you think in a year's time? Just curious, your thoughts. How do you think they'll be able to control people and environment, people and planet, and in terms of those 2 weeks of the games nicely, or do you have any? I don't know. Just curious what your forecast would be, knowing that that's a hard question.
It's really hard to, I think, forecast anything for me, especially because, with China, sometimes strange things happen, completely unexpected things pop up. I don't know, especially now, of course, we know, you guys have had your peaceful demonstration, action in Beijing. But what is going to happen during the Olympics? We don't know. With Falun Gong, the Chinese are going to crack down hard if these people try anything, and 100% sure they're going to do something. Now, even with, let's say, with the environment, some freak weather condition, some kind of a warm front that comes into Beijing at that time, if it traps all the air there, all the visitors could start choking. Forget the athletes. There's gazillion and one possibilities and probabilities on this. So, I mean, the thing is for me, whatever happens, what I see is a future of complete uncertainty in China. And in such a situation, Tibetans must never, it'd be absolutely irresponsibly foolish to give up the struggle for Tibetan independence. It is out of such conditions that Tibet has been independent. When the Mongol dynasty was falling, Tibetans became independent. When the Manchu weakened in Tibet and there's civil war in China was starting, then Tibetans. It is out of such conditions that we Tibetan people have gotten our feeling before. And if people don't like it, well, that's just too bad. But that's history to it. It is nothing to, it is not our fault. We have people who just been struggling for freedom.
What do you think about this Steven Spielberg advising on the opening, closing ceremonies? There's been calls from the Darfur people, of course, for him to, uh, not to pressure the Chinese to take action on Darfur and stop blocking, any UN resolution to call on the Chinese not to supply or support the Khartoum regime. But what do you think about, his relation, the direct relation between coordinating, choreographing, advising on the propaganda that actually will involve direct Tibetan elements, in order for the Chinese to cover up the genocide in Tibet?
No, I think it's what can you say? I admired Steven Spielberg, for many of them, starting with the Jaws. He's one of my favorite directors for that sort of thing, and I have a sort of juvenile taste in such movies. But even later, with his more serious films like Schindler's List, and you feel that here is a director who might be mature and who has some certain political insight, and now here he is advising a communist government on their kind of propaganda scheme, to make themselves look good, to cover up what they've done in Tibet and even in Darfur, their support of the Sudanese regime. And it is not for me, like, okay, as a Tibetan, I try to register my protest. But he and Tang Yimo, the Chinese director who are in charge of all the propaganda sort of hoo-ha that they could have for the Olympics, a Chinese dissident, a Chinese architect living in Beijing himself has written very strongly condemning them. And this is a person sticking his neck out because he's living in Beijing. In fact, it was his design for the Olympic Stadium, the one that looks like a bird's nest.
Ai
And
Weiwei, yeah.
because he wasn't doing it specifically for this Olympic, he worked for a Swiss company, I think, and his design was there. And he has come out clearly, and in no uncertain terms, he has called this, sucking up. I think if I translate from the Chinese, sucking up to, the Communist Party. So he felt it was disgusting what Tang Yimo and Steven Spielberg were doing, and they still are doing it.
Yeah.
People are shamed when it comes to money. Even someone who's sort of weeping, like, about the fact of what happened to the Jews and making films like Schindler's List. When it comes to making money of other people's suffering, he goes right ahead. So in some ways, we never learn from history. The only Holocaust that counts is my own personal Holocaust. Everyone else, well, that they have to look out for themselves. In some ways, this is called the solipsism of the sick man. It's like when I have a toothache, people in Rwanda, even if there's, 500,000 of them being killed there, it doesn't matter. My toothache is more important to me.
Mm.
And that is why still have problems in this world. And, I think till that asteroid hits this world, we're not really going to, there's never going to be a resolution. There's always going to be conflict, and selfishness and brutality,
And what
intolerance.
what do you think about in terms of this opportunity, Olympic opportunity for Tibetans? I mean, it's not like we said before. It's one of many battles, or you said it's one of many battles. It's not the only one, but for Tibetans, for Tibetan youth, people who really want to make a difference, what would you say is the importance of this moment? Why does it matter?
No, I think, of course, it matters because for China it is so important. They are going to use this to showcase all the so-called progress that they seem to have made after, the Cultural Revolution. That now China is a completely different person. That's what a completely different country, and that's what they want to show the world. And it is for us to show that that is a big lie. It is for us to demonstrate that. And I feel you guys have done your bit, and I'm sure you'll do more. But we haven't done such an effective job. Of course, it's difficult for Tibetans. Many of them don't have passports. There's no way to get into Beijing. But officialdom, in many ways, should have been working on this. They should have called for a boycott of the Olympics long time ago. They should have called on the Dalai Lama and his cabinet should have called on the Olympic Committee and condemned them roundly for giving Olympic Games to Beijing. They haven't done that at all. So I really feel we have absolutely, missed on this one. What you guys are doing and what will be done again in the next year, I think, my kind of admiration and support is completely there. Yet at the same time, I feel we could have done 100 times, what we are doing right now. It's not only up to one or two in individual groups like Students for Free Tibet or the Tibetan Youth Congress to do something. It's for the Tibetan government and the Tibetan people, led by the Tibetan government, led by the Dalai Lama, to do something. And I think it's also another thing, I think it's really important to start doing something now because just after the Olympics in 2008, we have 2009 coming, which is exactly, the 50th anniversary of the Lhasa uprising and our kind of diaspora, our coming into exile, Tibetan people. So one thing leads to another, and I'm sure by that time there will be tremendous unrest in Tibet. It's already happened inside Tibet. There'll be problems in China, and if the Tibetan government and the leadership don't work from now to gain some kind of advantage out of all this restlessness and all of public demonstration and and loss of lives which are bound to take place, sacrifice of lives and all the effort that goes into that people will be expending at that time, the sacrifices that people will be making. If the Tibetan government and the leadership, don't prepare themselves from right now to take political advantage of all these things that are happening in a positive way for the Tibetan cause, it will not only be a tragedy, but it will be, a blot in the legacy of the Tibetan government of the Dalai Lama.
Well, I think we'll end that here, and we have. I think what we'll do. Well, we'll come back to you in Tennessee in your basement there. What are you working on right now?
Hey, I'm working on just a second, I'll show you that. I've got my book here. This is my book.
Wow.
This is 1/4.
Wow. Echoes from Forgotten Mountains. I don't suppose you want to read us any passage.
Yeah, a literary journey into memories of Tibet. This is about one third of the book.
You don't want to read
So,
us a passage, right?
huh?
You don't want to read us a passage. Get
Okay.
people ready for what's coming.